Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining us today. It's that very sad time of year again when we remember the greatest of people that ever lived in this month of Muharram. We know when we attend lectures and go to majalis, we are often presented with the same topics, but that's because they are so important. The topic of today's program is hijab, and it's still relevant because it's what defines a Muslim woman and separates her into a special category. So ladies, in your opinion, what is the meaning of hijab and why is it still important for women to cover up?
I think the meaning of hijab to me is modesty. It's the way that we can control how other people perceive us and what we want to put out there.
And I feel also like the hijab in itself gives you that automatic level of respect. On the streets with whoever you meet, wherever they are, they give you that certain level of respect that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the hijab, and then from there you work you up obviously too.
Yeah, because when they see you, they understand.
Exactly.
I think it's a concept of modesty, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the community that I grew up in was very multicultural in terms of the school that I went to, even the mosque that I went to. Yes, it was pretty dominated by the Iraqi community, but we still had different people coming in who do come from different backgrounds. And even the primary school that I went to, the secondary school that I went to, it was always multicultural. It wasn't dominated by a certain background or even a faith, to be quite honest. So I never actually had that. You know, it's always been such a good community to grow up in, and I absolutely loved it. I genuinely loved my childhood.
Yeah. See, mine was a bit different. I grew up in a very non-Muslim community. I think I was the only Muslim in my year at school. And I grew up being the only Muslim, so it was very hard for me to hold on to my faith and my because Ramadan and Muharram and stuff, people would look at it really weirdly, like, oh, what's that type of thing. And the idea of hijab was even in my school, you weren't allowed to wear hijab. It was against the school uniform.
Was this in your primary school, your secondary?
The whole school, up to sixth form.
Oh wow.
But I went for 5 different schools, but that particular school that I was there, majority of the time it was actually against the school policy to wear hijab because it wasn't part of the school uniform.
So I grew up in Germany, and it was in southwest of Germany, and then just the village just outside it, and it was full of Germans. We were the only immigrants. We lived there for many years, I think more than 10 years. So all I knew was Germans, and I thought, to some extent, I actually thought I was German at some point. So even going to the school was all just full Germans. There was not even one other immigrant apart from me, and I still wore the hijab. And having to explain, it was all kids. You were at the age of 9, and kids just looking like, what is this thing? And they're trying to pull it, and you have to explain. But there's just so much knowledge you have that you can explain to other 9-year-olds. And as you grow older, there's more limitations, of course, but it never was a problem. The more of a high achiever you were, the better grades you got, the more outstanding you were, then everyone dismissed the hijab and everyone kind of respected you for who you were as a person. And that's why I didn't think, if we translate it into now, hijab should never be a limit. It never holds a woman back. It's never an excuse to not excel in any way, shape or form. It's more about it's a challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a good challenge, but it's worth it.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that.
I mean, you're definitely an ambassador of Islam, but I don't think it's a responsibility that's put onto me. It's more part of my identity and who I am, rather than a responsibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we can't take the responsibility on behalf of all the Muslim women just because we wear a hijab.
But don't you think that we kind of are? Because when someone sees you, they're like, oh, that's a Muslim, that's how they act and that's what they do. So whatever you do, people will look at it and be like, oh, that's how Muslims are. So
but that goes as part of who you are anyways, because the fact that you decide to wear the hijab in the first place, you got a certain level of principles and morals which you're following, which all fit in with Islam anyway. So I think it gets dangerous when, unfortunately, you do get hijabis that only look on the outside like hijabis, but inside something completely different. And that's when things come out, and then people start judging you or asking you questions. I was at uni in the first year I moved out, and I lived in student accommodation, and in the corridor there was other girls in the room, but then they wanted to go clubbing at one night. It was during Freshers Week, and the girls I wear a hijab, and I thought it was given that I didn't go clubbing, and then they would literally be like, oh, we're going out tonight, do you want to come join us? And I just looked at them awkwardly, and I said, well, I don't actually go clubbing. And they were really confused, like, why not? And I said, well, I don't we listen to music, or I don't really drink and I don't really dance with like, this is not our area. It's just, we don't do that in our religion. It's wrong. It's haram. And the shocking bit was when they said, but this girl a few rooms down, she goes clubbing and she's a Muslim too, and she parties harder than any of us. So I was only an 18-year-old having to explain to all these other girls, and they're all English, having to explain to them why I don't go clubbing. And I used Islam, and I at the end had to say, unfortunately, I'm just a hardcore Muslim. Because there was
they
no
think
other
you're an extremist.
And there was no way of explaining it, and you just think, oh, I'll just say that and get out of this conversation, go back to studying, or then delve into a further conversation about this, because there's nothing you can do.
Well, obviously, hijab comes with its restrictions. There's nothing that we can do about that, but it's whether those restrictions feel like you're limited by doing anything. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel completely comfortable in wearing the hijab.
Exactly. And that's because you wore it from qana', like you wanted to wear it and you're convinced that you're wearing it for the right reasons. Whereas unfortunately a lot of people nowadays wear it not for the right reasons, or they're forced to wear it by their parents, and as soon as they're 18, off it goes. It's, it depends. It depends who you are as a person, why you're doing it. And I think this is why it's really important to relate it back, obviously, to the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and our female role models, and why they were doing certain things and how their hijab is, etc. Learn from them, because once we are convinced, then we can confidently show that picture on the outside, and that's what matters.
Yeah. A lot of places that I go work, actually, people will ask me, like, why do you wear it and stuff and that. And I just sit there and explain, like, because when you have such a love for it, you can explain for it better. Like, this is why I wear it.
Exactly.
And it's empowering for me to wear it. I feel empowered.
Yeah, it's like what I was saying. It's the freedom of choice. And when you actually know why you're wearing it, that answer just comes so
naturally.
Exactly. Naturally is a perfect word to describe it, because for example, like you said, I grew up with it. Everyone in my family was wearing it. So I never questioned why I had to do it. Rather, I started to understand it just by seeing all the women in my life. And especially when listening to the stories of Lady Fatima and Lady Zainab, salam Allah alayhum. And it was that really inspired me to wear my hijab in the first place. At such a young age, I was 9.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the other important topic to talk about is the hijab nowadays versus the hijab of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. The differences in the way we wear it. We've all been there, where we don't wear the hijab in the modest way that we should do. There's a hair in there showing, an extra bit of skin here and there, or whatever. We forget to wear socks one day. And of course, we can't compare ourselves to Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, because her hijab was just impeccable, literally.
Yeah, there's a huge difference in the hijab. I mean, you would never be able to hear her voice. You wouldn't be able to see her. That's what the stories that we hear. You wouldn't even be able to see her shadow, let alone see any kind of part of her.
Exactly.
So, yes, whereas nowadays the hijab has become more of a fashion trend. It's quite difficult to keep up with that fashion trend and also maintain that modesty. And especially when you're trying to aspire to be at the same level of the hijab of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, it's a struggle. I can understand why. It's just because we are in a different era right now. We are in a different time, and for every time we have different expectations, different standards. So I have that understanding and I get it, but of course it's always there to want to be just like her.
I think it's definitely more liberal now. Whereas when people are taking hijab very lightly compared to back then, it was the be all and end all. Like that was the most important thing. She held onto hijab so strongly. Whereas now, like, if any little thing happens, people start to question and start to waver. Like, should we still wear hijab or not? Like, is it safe to wear hijab? Whereas back then, and she went through everything, and she still held on to it. And she still held on so strongly to hijab. Like, that's how important it was to her. Like, why is little things affecting our hijab? It shouldn't be that way. Like, work shouldn't mean anything. Like, if someone doesn't get a job just because of hijab, that shouldn't really affect it. It shouldn't change our opinion on hijab at all.
But then again, that's if we were still in an Arab country or Muslim country. We live in the West, in a Christian society. We are the minority at the end of the day. So hijab also is not supposed to be something that will attract attention. It's supposed to be the opposite. So the more over the top modest we are, the more attention we actually draw to ourselves.
Here I found it because, especially through the community that I grew up in, because people are so understanding and want me to feel comfortable. I felt comfortable enough to be the person that I want to be and dress the way I want to dress and be able to maintain that hijab. And people are very respectful. I'm always getting those questions. Oh my God, is this okay? I don't want to cross the line. Is this okay?
Like, and I still work in areas that are outside of London, and people will still think it's a bit funny and they'll give me funny looks. But if you're in London, in Central, it's fine. Because London is a multicultural society. But if you go to more areas outside of London, people, it's foreign to them. It's still foreign to them because they don't see people from other cultures regularly.
Exactly.
So it is something different.
I still, up until today, get patients when I enter the room, introduce myself as a doctor. They just look at me really confused. How, as if like a hijabi being your responsible doctor is not a thing. It's not. They just can't comprehend. Maybe the nurse, or HCA, but they wouldn't comprehend that you're actually the responsible doctor, which is still shocking up until today. We live in 2019. Like, there's so many professionals wearing a hijab, which is just a shame, unfortunately. But I think we're getting there.
Like I was saying, I mean, hijab does have its struggles. And some of the struggles that I've seen other people face and that I faced are things like when you get on a train and people do look at you differently. You are judged by what you're wearing. And because hijab is such a physical, that you can see it, it's a physical appearance. And women are labeled as Muslims and we are, identified with those stereotypes because we are wearing the hijab and that they can see it. Whereas, like we said, it is much easier for men and children, realistically, because they don't have any physical appearance where it says, oh, hi, listen, I'm a Muslim. But with that said, the beard does play a big role. Men are being judged by the length of their beard and how thick it is. So I'm not going to belittle that in any way, because I have seen it. But there's obviously the harassment, the name calling. I mean, when I first wore hijab I think I was in year 4, so I was 9 years old. And no one from my class actually understood it. They were, why is that on your head? What is it? Why are you wearing it? You're being weird. You're different. And at the time, I did feel quite bullied, but it was just that day. And then after that, there was no problem. I didn't have any problems, but it was just that moment, that moment of they were trying to understand it, but it was also in a way where it was, I felt like I was being ridiculed, and it wasn't a good feeling. And now as an adult, through everything that's been happening, I mean, I work in an area where there is always events, near Wembley Stadium. And when people come from outside of London, you've got people who are calling me a terrorist, and, you've got people who they will say things. They don't have any fear. And I have to be careful of the way I react. Just because, and I find that a struggle in itself, because you have to portray yourself as the good Muslim that you should be, rather than reacting out of anger and trying to get them to understand something. But some people just don't want to understand.
For me, I've had my fair share. Actually, just the other day we were on the train, me and my sister, and some guy sat right in front of us, and he started ripping out a picture of a hijabi in the newspaper and started tearing up, and he had a fit, and people were coming to comfort him and being like, are you okay? And then when I got really angry, because I was like, why am I being so offensive to you just sitting here? When my sister was like, calm down, Nadia, don't say anything. And I was like, okay. And I was explaining to the other people, like, this is why he's angry. And they were all in shock. And they were all so supportive. And one of the guys stayed with us on the train till, like, we got off, because he was worried for us. And it's so nice that you have one person who's attacking you, but then you have a community of people who are trying to support you as well and trying to take care of you, because they understand that it's not nice.
Definitely. I think my struggle with hijab is the reason why I'm here, actually. It's so I grew up in Germany, and my whole life we never thought that we'll move out of Germany or move country, because it was home. When I reached GCSEs, you do this work experience week where you go and try whatever profession you want. And I wanted to be a dentist back then. So I called on my local dentist of my village, and I was like, I want to start on Monday. And they said, yeah, sure, come in. The only rule was to wear all white. So wear white clothing, white trainers, and come in. So on Monday, I'm walking down the hill, as you do, wearing all white, from hijab down to trainers. And I arrive, and then the dentist looks at me from top to bottom, and she literally says, you either take off the hijab or there's no work experience for you.
Oh my God.
And this is not the bit that shocked me. I was all right, well, I'd rather I was like, what's your reasons though? And she said, well, it's my protocol of the practice, because it's not hygienic. And I was only like 15, and I said, but this is clean, it's fresh out of the washing machine. And then she said, no, because hair can fall into the patient's mouth during the procedures. And actually, I was so confused. It didn't make sense at the time. I was like, this is probably the least way of hair getting into a patient's mouth. But anyways, that is not the bit that upset me. The bit was when I went to Lockers to get my back again, and I saw 2 dental students who were doing the placement. And they looked at me and said, you can't even study dentistry at university if you wear a hijab. So Germany is divided into states. So the state that we were in Southwest London, every state has its own education system. And that education system of the state that we lived in said you can't study medicine or dentistry even at university or practice it with a hijab on. You can't even be a teacher with a hijab on because it's a sign of expressing your religion, and you should be neutral when you're a healthcare professional of any sort.
Does that rule still exist?
Not anymore. I think it's only a few years ago when a hijabi teacher took this case forward to court saying that I really want to be a teacher. Why is a hijab a thing? And then she won the court and they've changed the ruling. But if you go further up north, and this is something that we didn't know back then, because I went home and I just cried my soul out, and my parents were obviously very furious because this is the first incident of our 15 years in Germany that I've experienced racism hardcore. And my dad called our family lawyer up, and she literally just said to him, this is the beginning of all the racism struggles Farah will face if she wants to progress in life and have a proper career one day. And later on, obviously then subhanAllah, we moved here within literally a year after that incident to London. We never saw London before, never even thought about moving here. Or just for me, no pressure to get into medical school, but it's been tough having to move country and leaving a place that you thought was home because of the hijab.
Yeah. I started wearing hijab because of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. The story of Kabbalah and the way she held on to it and how she was so inspiring and empowered, because of her hijab, and it was so important to her to hold on to it. And she still stood up in front of all these people for her rights as well. That inspired me to wear hijab. I was like, if she can do it, and in that condition, in that society, even under all that torment and struggle, why wasn't I doing it? I actually wore it at a later age as well, because I heard all the stories and I was like, wow, I really should be doing, it's so important.
As in, I learned the importance of hijab through Sayyidah Zainab and Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. And when you think about their hijab, you think about you do think about the modesty of it, and you think about everything that she, like you said, everything that she did go through, yet she still maintained that hijab. And literally in the way that she walked and talked, and even just the way she looked. And it is a real inspiration, because we do it, I think we were talking about this yesterday, where we are struggling to just hold on to our hijab in today's society. And because society does have a great impact on how we dress and how we talk and how to fit in. And Sayyidah Zainab also had her struggles. She genuinely had her struggles, but she didn't let it get to her. So it does give me that strength that it is possible.
I think now, this day and age, things are we're trying harder to fit into society and to feel accepted, because we don't feel accepted as being Muslims. Regardless, we don't feel accepted because we're not like everyone else, and we already have that stigma put towards us. And that we're trying to make it a bit more accepting, where we're like, oh, okay, wearing jeans is a bit more accepting. Wearing a bit more colour is a bit more accepting. Doing things to please everyone else is a bit more accepting, in that we are kind of losing the idea of hijab. I do believe that. I think a lot of young girls, especially that I see, the younger generation, they are losing that idea of hijab. You see less abayas on the street. You see less, you see the hijab modified in such a way that I think, is it hijab anymore?
I mean, the one thing that we've quite understood here is that through Lady Zainab alayhi salam, she is the symbol of hijab. It's her modesty that our parents, our friends always compare our modesty to, and say, you need to be like her, just because she was such an amazing symbol. The impact that she had on everyone through everything that she's shown us, she is my inspiration. And I think she's an inspiration for quite a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I think getting to that level though is tough, but it's definitely a journey worth proceeding. And I think no one should just give up at any point and be like, I'll never be like Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, because of course Masumeen are a whole different level.
Yeah, she didn't give
but
up.
it's always a role model. The Ahl Bayt are always role model in all different characteristics and ways of living that we should always aspire to be. And it's a journey, but it's definitely something that we should aim towards.
I think the fact that they tried to like tear her hijab off and she still held on to it still so strongly, like she could have been like, okay, cool, this will save me.
Yeah.
Like, that was her struggle.
Yeah.
And I think she is the symbol of hijab. She is our role model that we should all aspire to be.